when I was a kid, I wanted to be Doctor Who. This is probably the closest I'll get. Right, so I reckon it's fairly important that I start a review of a Doctor Who game by saying that I'm a big Doctor Who fan. Like, big fan. While most of you are waiting for the next weekly TV episode, I'm over here waiting for the David Tennant and Colin Baker crossover audio drama. That all said, I've not, personally, been massively impressed with Chris and Jodie's run in the TARDIS. It just hasn't appealed to me in the writing department, which makes Doctor Who Edge of Reality quite interesting for me, because it's the first time I've experienced the 13th Doctor away from her usual creative team. And to be honest, I think it's fine. I quite like her in this. She doesn't have much to do, but I can tell she's not slouching, despite this obviously being, well, a Doctor Who game. What I do think kinda sucks about Jodie in this game though, is that they obviously couldn't get her in the recording studio as much as they'd probably have liked. And I can tell that because pretty early on, the story introduces an AI character that guides you around time and space. You know, instead of the series' main character who we all came to see and hang out with. I'd accept it if the AI's personality was anything more than Jodie light. She's basically just silly quips and observations.
Sir Manfred Grail, collector of objets d'art. Posh way of saying he's a hoarder when it comes to knickknacks.
Speaking of performances, the game's overall performance can get ropey at times. Like, really ropey. The game could have done with a lot more polish, but it's not so bad I'd call it unplayable. Besides, the only reason you'd pick up a game like this is if you are a Doctor Who fan, so all you want to know is how Doctor Who-y is it. Do any of you remember the little Doctor Who games on the official website around 10ish years ago? Well, it is better than those were. It's actually hard to review the game as a whole, because it's kind of split into 3 main sections with a handful of filler in between. Like the cover art happily shows off, you'll be going up against the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Weeping Angels, and the constant dread that David Tennant's inclusion is basically just a glorified cameo. Each enemy acts like it brings its own variety to the gameplay, but really they're all just the same basic stealth scenarios in different areas. Although a lot of praise does need to be given to the entire Weeping Angels section. Surprisingly, Edge of Reality is mostly a horror game. It's also mostly a walking simulator, which are just horror games that aren't scary. And again, that's honestly fine. It's a video game based on a family TV show. I was not expecting PT. Which might have actually made the genuine terror I felt during the Weeping Angels level so much more shocking. I was playing it alone at night, and I may have checked over my own shoulder once or twice. I wish that section was the whole game. That part needed to be longer. It was possibly my favourite horror experience of 2021. Everything this game had to work with just came brilliantly together here. When I started the level, my immediate thought was, funny how all these places just seem to be deserted. Which might be unfair to Edge of Reality. It's quite clearly not got the scope or budget to animate crowds of people throwing themselves around Victorian London. But once I realised it was the Weeping Angels I was dealing with, that lack of any human life made everything seem so much more eerie. The slow build-up, the constant feeling you're being followed, and the genuinely haunting music that backs the tense search around the abandoned house put me so on edge of reality. And that was all before I got locked in the catacombs with dozens of the creeps. Little touches like the sound of stone moving when the angels are out of your sight, and the sudden sound when you turn to see an angel has moved, do so much toward making this, quite possibly, one of the best horror experiences I've ever had. Which makes the rest of this review really disheartening, because everything after the angels section kinda sucks. After the angels, we're pitted against the Daleks, who are very easily outwitted by some simple stealth mechanics. Then after that, it's the Cybermen, who also can't see 10 feet in front of themselves. Oh, and they also can't walk faster than a flap of skin. And constantly yell about the Age of Steel as though they're passively aggressively responding to an argument that happened hours before. When you're not destroying half the Dalek race single-handedly, you'll be squinting at the walls and floor, desperately trying to figure out what button you're supposed to press or trinket you need to pick up. That'd all be fine if the objects weren't next to impossible to select at times. Finicky isn't a big enough word for it. A lot of the puzzles need you to look around for very small objects in very cluttered environments. So if you miss one, you're stuck. And this isn't like every other game with object puzzles that are competent. There's absolutely no attempt to even remotely signpost any key items. So you spend ages walking around the forest, staring at the floor, hoping you practically fall over whatever you're supposed to be looking for. I thought this was supposed to be Doctor Who, not Slender Man. Anyway, I found the objective in the end. Turns out I had a black light the game neglected to mention, which allowed me to follow a trail of blood to the key item. Actually, maybe this is supposed to be Slender Man. Ironically, but not surprisingly for a Doctor Who game, Edge of Reality feels like a game out of its time. It probably would have seemed much better if it came out 10 years ago. There's so much in here that just should not be a problem for a modern release. Like, why is there such a long gap between each line of dialogue? That'd also be fine if this game wasn't 90% standing around waiting for people to finish talking at you.
Reports indicate the presence of temporal anomalies. Explain?
I don't get how these issues made it past playtesting, but I do get pretty tired of it. A lot of that gameplay nonsense doesn't matter though, because like I said at the top of this review, the only reason you would sink £20 into this game was if you're a Doctor Who fan. So all that really matters is, does it do aesthetic justice to the show everybody loves? And yeah, it does. Aesthetically, I'm having a blast. Just seeing the TARDIS in a video game is so bizarre and cool. It's even got its own intro. It's awful, but it's still a unique opening that gets you pumped for adventure. So long as that adventure is slowly walking around random places and picking up collectibles that make you go, oh, I recognise that. And being facetious for fun there, I actually do think the collectibles are a nice addition, even if they can be a little odd at times. Why is this guy's miniaturized corpse on the TARDIS console? That's essentially like keeping a dead body in your living room, right? Anyway, again, that doesn't matter, because I got this game for one reason, and one reason only: David Tennant. The second his voice hit my eardrums, I was ready to give this game 10 out of 10, best game of all time, and space.
Timey wimey lemon and lime.
But I resisted, and I very quickly realised that the 10th Doctor's role in Edge of Reality was going to be nothing more than an extended cameo. Kind of like Jodie's role as well.
I could do so much more! So much more!
Don't get me wrong, I loved every second he was in this, but I would have loved it just as much if I watched it for free on YouTube. It's definitely the game's highest highlight. I just wish it could have been a more significant part of the game. Also, they hide his bloody screwdriver behind stupidly overpriced DLC. That is not on Maze Theory. I'm not okay with that. Also, this might be my fault, but I still blame the game for it. I think I'm too fat to get in the TARDIS. Edge of Reality is a game that relies on you getting excited about a load of random visual and audio cues. And to be fair, that's what I enjoyed most about it. It's not a great game. It's acceptable at best. And £20 is quite a stretch for something that's greatest accolade is being acceptable, even if you are a Doctor Who fan. However, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a ton of fun with it, even if it was just because it's more Tennant.
Isn't that brilliant?
More importantly though, this game does answer one question fans have been dying to know since the 1960s. How is it bigger on the inside?
The inside's bigger than the outside? It's bigger on the inside. It's bigger on the inside. It's bigger on the inside.
It's bigger on the inside, that's all.
It's not. It's just got a big hole in the back. Thanks for watching, guys. Did you buy Edge of Reality? Did you enjoy it? Who's your favourite Doctor? That's always a fun one to ask that never leads to any aggression or complaining. If you did enjoy this, we'd really appreciate if you'd be so kind as to leave a like or even subscribe. And if you want to financially support the show, the link to our Patreon is in the comments. Aside from all that, hope you guys are all well, and
Goodbye.
Ooh.